Well, it's 7 o'clock on Sunday night, and you know what that means. It's time for the 76 Capital Leadership Series. And tonight we have a great show. I mean, great show. We're going to have a really good time. Our guest tonight, her name is Jessica Gelman. And if you don't know Jessica, you've got to know her, and you've got to hear her story of what she's done, not only athletically, but also in the business world, and how she gives back and helps others. And I'm really excited about what Jessica's going to share with us today. Jessica is the CEO of the Kraft Analytics Group, a technology and services company that focuses on data management, analytics, as well as strategic consulting. She has been part of the Kraft family. Bob Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots. So you'll hear a little bit about her involvement with all the different things that are happening with New England sports. And also, Jessica is the co-founder of the highly regarded MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, the first and the largest analytics-focused sports conference in the country. I mean, some of the speakers, we're talking about President Barack Obama, Adam Silver, Steve Ballmer, and many more have spoken at her conference. So really excited to talk about that. And she's won a number of awards. She has an MBA as well as her undergraduate degree from Harvard. She also played basketball there, was one of the star basketball players and one of the best basketball players in the history at Harvard. So we'll hear about all of that. She's married. She has 2 sons and lives in the greater Boston area, and really excited to move on to that. But as many of you know, before we get started at every show, the first thing we do is we go to the news and we talk about what happened, this week. And many of you are watching the show right now live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, as well as on Facebook, as well as all the platforms that we have, including Twitter. So Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So the first story today, which is just one of the things that we wanted to go in through, is we'll touch on what happened in the NBA this week. I mean, sports are back. We've been talking about this. We've been talking about when will sports come back, but the NBA is coming back. The official return will be on July 31st in Orlando. 22 teams will compete for 16 playoff spots. I mean, this is great. It's going to be fun. It's like almost like the NBA doing March Madness, but with their normal playoff scenarios, best of 7 series. I mean, this is going to be a lot of fun. So excited about that. And that's something that's just amazing to happen. And then another thing which is super exciting is a few weeks ago, we had the founders of play-by-play sports broadcasting camps on our show. And they shared with you what they were doing with their virtual camps, because a lot of people aren't able to go to their normal broadcasting camps, which they do in LA and Boston and Philly and in Dallas and all over the country. But this year, many of those camps are canceled. So we're going to go virtual. And the camp's not only going virtual, and they've not only one time, but they're going twice, because the first camp sold out and now the second camp is up and running. So playbyplaysports.com is the site to find out about where you can put your son or daughter into a play-by-play sports broadcasting camp. That'll be really exciting as well. So we only have 150 spots in that. And our third story tonight is about our startup sports showcase. We do these showcases each month, and we did a straight sports tech showcase, but this month we are doing an esports showcase. So applications are being accepted up until midnight tonight. So get your application in to be one of the presenters of our Startup Esports Edition Showcase. It is going to be amazing. So get your stuff in there so you could be one of the 6 companies that we showcase. And our last story of the week is that we had our leadership series, which many of you know. It's a great way for you to catch up on all the news. We do this every Sunday. We do this every Wednesday at 7 p.m. live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So sign up on our YouTube page to get updates. You can do the same thing on Facebook as well. And we're excited to have all of you come out and watch our shows each week. And this week, as I was saying, we have a super guest that I am just really excited about to have on our show. Her name is Jessica Gelman, and here she is.
Hi. Nice intro. I loved the background.
Thank you. Thank you. No, we're super excited to have you and on the show. And as we were discussing beforehand, we've had some super powerful women on our show. I mean, we had Joanne Pasternak, and she was sharing with us all the things that she did from a nonprofit perspective with the Golden State Warriors and the San Francisco 49ers. And she shared with us and showed her her Super Bowl, her NBA championship rings and Super Bowl rings. And then we had our past show, Deirdre Lester, who was the chief revenue officer at Barstool Sports, and she talked about what it's like working with Erica Nardini and El Presidente and all the crazy things that go on over there. So it's been great, and we're super excited to have you. So again, thank you so much for joining our show, Jessica.
Thanks, and we should also thank Scott Pioli for putting you and I in touch with each other.
Absolutely, and Scott's welcome on the show anytime. You know, we're you know, I don't want him to feel like he was left out in any way. You know, but Scott, it really was an amazing introduction, and I loved our conversation. I'm so happy that you're on the show, and you know, I'd love for you to share with our audience tonight a little bit of your background. You know, where you grew up, and you know, just you know how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I've been thinking a little bit about this, and I decided the best way for me to share this would be based on what I learned through sports, and rather than just kind of, you can already read my background. So, you know, first and foremost, I was a point guard, and my role as a point guard was to set others up to be successful, to understand people's strengths and weaknesses. Oh, there you go. There's a photo. I was telling Wayne before that these are only up on Facebook, so you know, now they're public, I'm worried. But part of that responsibility was having an awareness of when people were not at their best or where people had lacked confidence. And this is really important for how I learned and how I've evolved as a person, and especially important as a CEO of an early stage company, identifying problems, understanding people's challenges, making people gain confidence. My college coaches used to say, send a message with your past. And there's different ways to do that in the business world too. How do you give people confidence in their ability, for example, to present in front of clients? How do you give them the reps in practice so that they're more comfortable once they get into a live situation? The second area that I would say from learning from sports that tells you about who I am is I was a student of the game. As you can tell from this photo, I don't have very high ups. I wasn't the most athletic or the fastest, but my coach in the media guide when I was, I think it was a sophomore in high school, said that I was deceptively quick, which is, I think, a backhanded compliment. Not a compliment, actually. She was just saying I was slow. But what's important there is that the way that I overcame some of my athletic limitations, I guess I would call it, is I just was a real student of the game and learned as much as I could. I watched games all the time. And again, the same is very much true in my job now and just throughout my career. We'll talk a little bit about this hopefully later, but prior to Kager, I ran most of the customer-facing business lines for Kraft Sports and Entertainment, which is the Patriots. So ticketing, retail, marketing, analytics. And in all of those cases, like, I didn't know how to do those things before I took over those roles. And I had to consistently learn new skills, ask lots of questions of people, and be doing research on a continuous basis. The other thing is that in the sports world, as I'm sure you've probably talked about, there isn't necessarily like a linear path of you do this and get this. And so as terms of being a student of the game, that's also a little bit about how this MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference came about, again, which we can talk about. But that's really creating a forum. Yeah, but it's really about creating a forum. But the last thing I was going to say is around resiliency. Sorry if you guys can hear my kids in the background.
All good.
That failure will happen. And this is a story that I think is important to share. When I grew up outside of Chicago in the 80s. And obviously Michael Jordan was everywhere, but they didn't have camps for girls. And so I went to a boys camp, a clinic, and it was to try out for a team called Small Fry, which I don't even know if it exists anymore. but I didn't make the team. And one of the fathers came up to me on the way out and said, you should have been on that team. And that I was, quote, gypped. Well, I learned a lot from going to the camp, and I think that was the first time I realized that things weren't always equal. But I also made a vow to myself that day that I would one day start a basketball camp, which I did when I came back from playing overseas, that I ran for 5 years. When I was working and living in New York, I did consulting after playing professional basketball. And that's a big part of who I am, which is on a continuous basis, trying to push people forward and give people opportunities to learn in environments where they might not be as comfortable. So I was comfortable going to an all boys basketball camp. It stunk not to make the team, but I wanted to learn from that failure and find a way to make a change in the future. So
that's amazing. So you grew up in Chicago as well as spent time in Connecticut.
Yeah. So sorry, that's a little confusing. My family moved from Chicago to Connecticut when I was a sophomore in high school. So that was, as you might imagine, a pretty impactful experience to uproot after we lived in Chicago for 10 years, so 5 to 15. I would say from my perspective, it was the greatest thing that could have happened because, especially as an athlete, I was in an environment outside of Chicago. It was a town called Highland Park where girls didn't really play sports. It was like kind of cool to be on the pom-pom team, which is not to say that isn't hard, but it certainly wasn't kind of what I was all about. And so moving to the East Coast, and everyone played sports, and it was just a great environment to move into, and it just felt like I had kind of like gone into the Twilight Zone. So I was thrilled.
So when you moved back to Connecticut, do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have an older brother, but he went to college basically when we moved, so he didn't go to the same high school as me.
Was he an athlete too? He
was a wrestler, so I spent a lot of time cheering him on while he was wrestling. I know maybe a little too much about wrestling. He then became a bodybuilder, actually, so I also know a little too much about bodybuilding. Wow.
So in high school, you were a Connecticut's Gatorade Player of the Year. So I mean, you came in as a sophomore and automatic. That's amazing that you're able to.
You really did your research.
So what and so that's really incredible. So you come to Connecticut. You're new. What high school did you go to?
I went to Staples High School. It's in Westport, Connecticut. So my parents were really great about when we were moving. We went and looked at a bunch of different high schools, all public high schools, but they basically said, we're uprooting you in the middle of your high school years. We want to give you at least a little bit of say in where you're going to live. So I actually got to meet the high school coaches at a couple of the schools that I looked at. And, Staples, and my coach in high school was Ed Heidick, who was a great coach, a great champion for girls basketball in the state of Connecticut. And I had a great experience when I moved. The team actually had just gone to the state finals for the first time and just won their first Ivy League title. And they graduated all their seniors. I didn't know any of that when we were moving. I just liked the feel of the school. We ended up winning the conference title again, and then also went back to the state semifinals the next year, despite losing basically the entire senior class. So it was a fun environment. Obviously, it was the early days of UConn basketball. They hadn't even won their first national championship, to date myself a little bit. But I ended up playing on summer basketball teams with people like Jennifer Rosati, who went on and was a star at UConn, Nikisha Sales, a number of people like that. So it was a difficult. That was actually probably a more difficult experience, but it certainly broadened my exposure to people across Connecticut. And I mean, basketball in Connecticut is obviously great.
And then from Connecticut, you went on to Harvard, right? And what was that? I mean, how was that process like? So you were one of the Gatorade Players of the Year. You could have gone a lot of places. Why Harvard?
So yeah, I was recruited. It basically came down to 3 schools. So I I went and looked at Iowa, which at the time had gone to the Final Four and was coached by Vivian Stringer. And I mean, I was really impressed by her as a coach. And then I went to Harvard, and I also looked at Princeton. But there's something about the Harvard program. Kathy Delaney Smith, who was my head coach, who was my coach and is still the head coach at Harvard, just created this incredible family. I believed in what she was trying to create, and I obviously was very much focused on the education. I'm very thankful that my parents allowed me to go to Harvard. Certainly had to take out a lot of loans. I worked all through college and paid for a huge portion, as you might imagine, not only being in school, playing a sport, and working to pay for all of my expenses was very challenging, but it was unbelievable training for what I would say my life is like now. People kind of joke, well, how do you have Kager and have family? You run the Sloan Conference, on the side. And I think that's a lot of the skills that I learned while I was playing basketball at Harvard. And I studied psychology there, by the way. But to me, it wasn't really a very difficult decision. I really wanted to have the full college experience. And I thought going and playing, listen, it was really cool getting off the plane in Iowa and having several hundred people clapping as you're getting off the plane. But I really wanted to have the college experience, which I was definitely able to have at Harvard. Academics obviously came first. And I'm so thankful for that decision. My college basketball teammates are inspirations to me. I learned a tremendous amount from them throughout my time. They helped get me through Harvard in many cases. I went to public schools, so they were very good public schools and great communities, but I certainly did not learn how to study as well as I should have in high school. And I had a lot of catching up to do when I got to college.
Well, these are some great stories, and it's, as we mentioned at the top of the show, it's Sunday night, so we're here on our 76 Capital Leadership Series, and tonight's guest is Jessica Gelman. Super excited to continue this conversation. She's shared with us what she did and her playing career at Harvard. After Harvard, you played professionally. Where did you play professionally?
So I went and played in Israel, and it was a really unique opportunity. I wanted to just say one more thing about playing basketball at Harvard. And so I studied psychology there, which I think is actually really important. And what I studied in particular, and I was very fascinated in part because of my time growing up in Chicago when Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan, is I was trying to understand what are the characteristics of people who perform best in pressure situations. And that was what I ran experiments in college on a local high school basketball team to kind of better understand. So I learned the concepts of test and control. It was very statistical in nature, incredibly analytically oriented. And I didn't necessarily know that's what I was getting into when I started studying psychology at Harvard, because I think a lot of people think of it as sitting on a couch, but it was incredibly quantitatively based. And it set the baseline for so much of my thinking that I apply to business today, and that I was applying why we needed change in particular and new technologies when I was running different parts of Kraft Sports and Entertainment that ultimately led to Kager. But listen, having the chance to go and play professional basketball, I have to tell you, I had an amazing college experience. We won 2 Ivy League titles. We were the first team to go undefeated in the Ivy League. We went to 2 NCAA tournaments. So playing in March Madness was incredible. And just had kind of that experience of playing college sports that you dream of having. And really my teammates again are longtime friends and inspirations and folks I can really rely on. So when I went and played basketball overseas, it was a rude awakening because that's not what professional sports is necessarily like in terms of the people on your team being your closest friends and that feeling of camaraderie. I think it can be depending on where you play, but that wasn't the experience in particular that I had. I had never been outside of the United States. I guess one could say I was a little sheltered. So, it was a very different culture for me. And I struggled with it, to be totally honest. The basketball, it was also just strange. People can't imagine today being on the other side of the world and not having the ability to talk to your friends on WhatsApp or Slack or whatever it might be. And I felt pretty isolated for sure. But it was fun to get to dedicate myself every single day to running, lifting, playing basketball, and my overall skills got a lot better. But I think intellectually, I just felt that I wasn't being challenged in the ways that I wanted to. So when I had actually accepted a job at a consulting company, that they allowed me to defer it for a year. So once I was done playing overseas, and I wanted to go and play because I had an inkling even back then that I wanted to go into sports. And I thought having the experience of being a professional athlete to be the product would be very valuable for one day in the future, having that experience, which, by the way, it really was. Even my first project working for the Patriots was looking at training camp and potentially moving it, and understanding and feeling what that kind of disruption might be. It was very valuable for me to have gone and played and felt what it was like to, again, be a player.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. One of our earlier 76 Capital Leadership Series, we had Tal Brody, who is the American-Israeli, superstar basketball player, as a lot of people call him, the Michael Jordan of Israeli basketball. And we were talking about the difference of going to a professional NBA game here as compared to what that looks like in Israel. And I said to him, it's the way I describe basketball games in Israel. It's a little bit of a college basketball game mixed with a European soccer game, right?
It is very loud. So there's actually an Israeli song you may know where the Jesse, and they would chant it to me. And also, like, you're in the community as well. Like, I lived in the town that I was representing, and I would be walking the streets, and they would just, "Hey, Jess, can we buy you a kebab?" So there are some very surreal aspects to it. I mean, also it was 1997, so it was when there were suicide bombings going on over there. So it wasn't really the safest place. I don't think my parents were very happy they definitely were not happy that I went.
So tell us, after playing professional basketball, doing some consulting work, how did you end up working for Bob Kraft?
Well, it was fortuitous for sure. During my second year at Harvard Business School, the Patriots were building Gillette Stadium. The Krafts were building Gillette Stadium, and they were looking for a team to. You guys really got some great photos here. And anyways,
I gotta give all the credit to our producer and my chief of staff, James Santor. He's the one who's the man when it comes to all this stuff. So
nice job, James. So a couple of my classmates and I applied, and the field study was for Gillette Stadium to. There's club space. If people have watched games, there are the red seats that you see on TV. It was basically looking at how many events you could have on non-game days. So events being weddings, graduations, whatever it might be. And it was basically writing a business plan and a business case for leveraging this massive asset that the Krafts had just invested in, which is Gillette Stadium, and finding additional revenue streams. So we did this project, and big thank you to my teammates on that project. Obviously, I did not expect that it would turn into a full-time job, but we did a really thorough analysis. I've led a couple field studies since then, so I certainly understand why they were impressed by what we did. We took it very seriously. We did a lot of primary research, surveying, interviewing across other teams in the NFL. And had a really great experience. We did our project. We delivered our project about 2.5 weeks before we graduated. And as I was walking out the door, the Kraft said, let us know if we can open any doors in sports for you. So as a dutiful business school student, I followed up And I basically came in working and evaluating a lot of what is now Patriot Place, which is a real estate establishment now down around Gillette Stadium. So everything from Bass Pro to the Partners Healthcare relationship that they have with Brigham. And that was what I was doing for the first part. And then the Krafts, I mean, listen, they're incredible entrepreneurs, visionaries, leaders. And so Jonathan had an idea to create a credit card program. It became something that's Extra Points, was a partnership with MBNA. We were the beta for that program that then rolled out across the NFL, baseball, I think even the NBA. And, so I was getting this incredible experience learning from Robert and Jonathan, very hands-on, about how to think outside the box, how to question the status quo, how to bring different pieces and different thoughts together to create new ideas. And that was obviously just incredible learning to have so early on in my career. So I've been working for them now for 18 years, which is completely beyond my comprehension.
So within those 18 years, and we're here live on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. We're live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, as well as on Twitter tonight, because it's Sunday night, and that's what we do on Sunday nights. And we're always so excited to have such great leaders within the sports industry. And we have Jessica Gelman with us from Kager, as well as the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, and we hadn't even gotten to that part of the story. And it's been so exciting to hear all the things that you've done, up until then. But when you were with the Patriots, the Patriots won a few games, I think, or something like that. Had a couple good players. And
yeah. Do you want to see the rings? Yeah.
All my Philly people, I don't know, but I mean,
okay. I think you guys had the last laugh, so it's okay.
I'd love to. Of course, we want to see him.
Yeah, no, listen. Do you want me to answer the question, or you want me to show the rings?
We could do both. Talk about how great it was, and what was it like winning all those Super Bowls, and what was it work, and doing all the things that you did while you were there.
Okay. Well, so let me get them in the screen correctly. Yeah, can you see them? Okay.
Oh my God, the screen! I got to pull back. I mean, you have so many. Oh my God.
These are the last three. So the first three, I was relatively junior within the organization. So actually having that polarity of experiences was really, really interesting. Well, I'll give the Krafts a tremendous, as always, they're such great leaders. And they're always thinking about how to prepare for, when the business and the climate might change. So in the second year the second title in 2004, I was talking with Robert and Jonathan about understanding our fans and our customers. And it was the very early days of email marketing. We didn't even have Facebook. Obviously, that was in 2007. And we started to think about how we could better engage our customers and know them and kind of prepare for when the team, certainly didn't expect to have almost 2 decades of dominance, but about how to really nurture that fan and create an ongoing relationship with them. And so much credit to them to be ahead of the curve and making technology investments. We had our first customer-focused data warehouse in 2005. Wow. Or 2004, this was before people were doing personalized emails. Before that, people would just take emails, load them, and send out mass communications. And so to think like that and make that investment, a lot of people in the kind of glory days, and we actually were looking at the Celtics at that time. It was before they had the big three, and how can we prepare for the day when the team is not that good? So we had a ton of investments over time. We went through maybe 4 or 5 different platforms. And while kind of my focus was originally exclusively on the customer marketing side, we've started applying that to other parts of the business, so ticketing. And at that point, it started to extend beyond just And not that it's just, but in terms of understanding our season ticket member, but it also extended to inventory management and pricing. And so again, we were, I think, ahead. I know we were ahead of the curve in terms of how we were applying elements of analytics from the customer to our ticket analyses and inventory management. And then I started overseeing retail. So, there are 2 stores, an e-commerce business, and managing that and growing that. And what's also super interesting there is that on the ticketing side, the team has been sold out since the Krafts acquired the team in 1993. And so the way to capture new fans and get an entry point is through retail. People can buy, a $10 or $15 hat or t-shirt or whatever it might be. And so that became a great way to get that first entry with a customer and grow them. One of the stories that I like to share is about, we had a customer who came into the store who bought an autographed Tom Brady picture, a couple $1,000s. And part of the process was capture that contact information and then send them a communication to kind of cross-sell them. So at that point, the cross-sell was to either the wait list or the club seats where there was some availability. And the person said they had interest in club seats. They then got a phone call from the premium seating group, the VIP services group, and they ended up signing up for club seats. It turns out that person who had bought that autographed item was the president of Samsonite. Samsonite ultimately became a sponsor of the organization. So again, like that filtering process and that way of thinking really was, we were ahead of our time with that respect. So ultimately, I mean, we can get into it, but that's some of the challenges that we were experiencing with the data, pulling it from out of the systems, out of the ticketing system, out of our retail system, led to the technologies that are out there aren't doing what we need them to do. And, did research for 7 or 8 months and put together a couple-page plan and said, hey, I think we could do this ourselves. And, oh, by the way, you guys have been encouraging me to think about like a business maybe that we could spin off. I think this could be it. And, this is also one of the things that is so great about working for the Krafts, which is that they are entrepreneurial. They see things before they happen. And they were just, let's go. I mean, I was like, we need a couple of days, we need a couple months, we need to like hire people, but it was that quick.
Wow.
And that was probably 7 years ago.
So that was about 7 years ago, but even before that, so going back to 2006. So
yes.
2006, you started the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, right? So
yes.
how did that even come about? I mean, it is the biggest, sports analytics conference, probably the biggest sports conference out there today. And how did it even happen?
This is one of those great organic growth stories. So Daryl Morey, who is the general manager, I think everyone knows who he is now, the general manager of the Houston Rockets. He and I were friends. He was at the Celtics. One of my college teammates had introduced us. He started about 6 months after he started the Celtics 6 months after I started working for the Krafts. And we became friends very quickly. I mean, I joined his fantasy football league. We would play 2-on-2 basketball. He would cheat, and then he would win. But it was like a really good just friendship. And so he was actually teaching a class at MIT Sloan, which is where he went to school. And I went to the class to just kind of learn and see, again, back to this being a student of the game, to see if there were anything that I could apply to my day-to-day work. He then called me up maybe 6 months later and said, hey, would you teach this class with me? And he said, you can bring the business side, the customer side. I said, yeah, that sounds great. So we started teaching the class. And I remember we were going to grade the exams, and at a shady Chinese restaurant in Cambridge, by the way. And he got a call and started talking to me about what was happening, which was that he was being recruited to go and be the GM of the Houston Rockets. So he got the job, And it was actually at the women's Final Four, after the women's Final Four, which was in Boston in 2006. We were out for drinks, and he was, I'll just come fly back. And I was like, I don't think you're gonna be able to fly back every other week to teach this class. And so we conceived of having a conference at that time. We had people coming to class, and the first year it was maybe 150 people, probably 25 of them were my friends. And it was a one day, it was all over different parts of the MIT campus. It was snowing, but we did it. We pulled it together in about 5 months. Actually, the student lead at that time, Marshall Einhorn, is now the head of US Maccabi, based in Philadelphia. And if you can believe that.
I actually spoke to him.
Oh, you did?
This past week.
Oh.
And his kids go to the same school as my kids, and we had never met. We were recently introduced. That's such a small world. I didn't know that. So
yeah, he was the first student lead, and then it again grew very organically, because he was a student in our class the year before. And so that was how it started. By the fourth year, we basically had outgrown the space at MIT. It was, I think it was maybe 750 people. And so we decided to move it off campus. And Mark Cuban started coming in year 2. Bob Kraft started coming in year 2 as well. And ESPN started providing some support in videoing the conferences, the different panels. And again, they were only one-day events at this time, and it was on Saturday too. It wasn't Friday and Saturday. And then we moved it off campus, and it remains a student-run conference. Daryl and I guide and coach the students, and it's a great experience for them. They basically have the experience of running a mini business and learning great skills about negotiating, managing their peers, setting agendas, marketing, I mean, everything you can possibly imagine. And I love it because it's a great give back. It's a lot of fun to have the energy. Each year, the students want to kind of do something net new. And so we always add a couple of cool new wrinkles that keeps the
So it seems like it's pretty amazing. I've seen, some of the things you've done, and look at these. Look, it's amazing to see who you've been able to bring.
So we have 3,500. We have about 3,500 people the past 3 years. President Obama came 3 years ago. I mean, obviously that was one of the coolest experiences of my life, to get to interview him. Hopefully, you have both of us interviewing him. But he was so gracious. It's funny because when I was up on stage, I kept just thinking to myself how I used to try and stay focused when I was shooting free throws at the end of games, and that's what I was trying to do when I was listening to him. I was just like, just stay focused, stay in the moment. And he shared so many great lessons, and his love of sports is really sincere, and the way that he wove how he applies analytics to his leadership style and lessons of sports to how he leads is truly compelling. And obviously he did it. He's done amazing things.
So it seems like we have a little bit of a sound issue. So let me just see what we can do about that for 1 sec. And I'm not sure what we'll try to figure out that as we figure this out. We'll be popping back to this in a second. We have a little bit of a sound issue. We'll probably figure that out in a second, but it's really been amazing on our 76 Capital Leadership Series tonight with Jessica Gelman, the co-founder of what is amazing, what she's done with the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, as well as what she's doing with Kager and the crafts. And we're going to go back to Jessica and see if we can get that handled. Jessica, are we back here? Let's see.
I put in a wired headset. Did that help?
Yeah, it still sounds a little bit like a little robotic. We'll try to figure out what we need to do to get this thing fixed here as we continue with figuring it all out. But let's see, try it again. Let's see if
I'm sounding robotic?
Yeah, maybe what we do is it just, you never know. We've had COVID-19, we've had so many other things going on. There's probably all sorts of, types of things going on. But maybe what we do is we have you log in and come right back in, and we'll fix that. And in the meantime, I think one of the things that we'll do is talk about what we have coming up. I mean, so one of the things coming up with one of our next 76 Capital Leadership Series, we're really excited about this one. Just like we had talked about before, we're bringing in people all across the sports industry to our 76 Capital Leadership Series. This Wednesday coming up, we have Mason Plumlee and Tom Eggleston. Tom is a venture capitalist. Mason Plumlee is former Duke standout, as well as now center on the Denver Nuggets. So really excited to have a conversation with them about sports and business and what it's like playing in the NBA and what it will be like playing down in Orlando, as all the 22 teams go down to Orlando to play as the NBA continues their season and goes right into the playoffs. So we'll talk to Mason about that. We'll talk to Tom about the number of the investments that they've made in the tech sector as well as in the sports sector, and excited to jump into those conversations as we move on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. We're gonna go back to Jessica Gelman now. Jessica, I think you're back and ready.
I don't know. Is it working?
We're good.
Okay. I don't sound like a robot?
No,
I think my kids were probably messing with the Wi-Fi.
Your kids are probably playing Fortnite or doing something. You have two boys. We haven't talked about them yet, so.
Yeah, two boys, almost 4 and a 6-year-old. And, it's obviously been very challenging running a company while also doing full-time childcare. My wife also is the CEO of a company, a healthcare company. But it's also been incredible, to be honest, to have this extra time with them. I'm having a ball with them. I coach the basketball teams. They are the light of my life, for sure.
Well, that's amazing. I was talking to my son, who's now 16, and I was telling him about you. I was telling him about your background, and I said, I was talking to him about our conference or our conversation about your conference, and he said to me, Dad, why didn't you ever go to her conferences? And I said,
yeah.
Well,
I'm wondering too.
Her conferences because I was coaching your basketball games. I said, and he said, well, what about this year? I was in high school. I'm in high school. I said, well, what happened this year is it was right before basically the shutdown. And unfortunately didn't get to go, but there were some incredible conversations and panels that I've gotten a chance to watch. Some of them, of course, with what we look at 76 Capital was as investors in the sports tech world and in the esports industry and the sports betting industry. To see Matthew Berry there this year, to see Jeff Yass from Susquehanna talk about the sports betting industry could be $1 trillion industry. I was super excited for him to talk about that because that's the way we look at things at 76 Capital. I know Adam Silver talks about the sports betting industry as being a $500 billion industry. We think it's double that. We think there's just such opportunity there. And I'd love to hear, from your perspective, just what it's like to bring these just incredible thought leaders each year to the conference and what you learn from them and how the conference is going overall.
Well, so this past year we had just under 3,500 people, and the conference is a mix of panels, which is where we'd have luminaries speaking. Everyone you can see here, Nate Silver, A-Rod, and Bill James, and pretty much everyone and anyone that you can imagine has spoken, and it's unbelievable. The other part of the conference, so we'll probably have about 30 plus panels every year, but another really big part of the conference is around innovation and showing people how analytics is really being used on a day-to-day basis. So we have these competitive advantage talks where people will actually share how they are applying analytics to their work. And I would very much encourage people to watch those videos because there's a tremendous amount of learning. Then we have research paper competition. If you guys read ESPN or The Ringer, you probably have heard of Kirk Goldsberry. He actually won the research paper competition, I think in the 6th or 7th year of the conference. And then he was kind of found. Many of the people who've won the research paper competition have gone on to work in sports. Second Spectrum, which is a well-known sports technology company that does ball tracking, among other things, actually won the research paper competition twice and then became a company after that. So that's a huge part of what we do. We have a startup competition, which we talked a little bit about before, but that's a great way for sports organizations that are early on to get exposure to leaders of industry. And we do it kind of in a Shark Tank type style. But Shot Tracker and Noah Basketball as examples came to the conference and then kind of skyrocketed from that. There's probably a couple others that I'm forgetting. Wayne, I hope not one of yours. And
well, no, you got Shot Tracker, so I know Dave and I were, they were very excited to be part of the conference, and they're really doing some great things. So it's awesome to hear how not only do you bring in some of the greats, but you're able to really help lift up some of the young startups, and that's what we're all about at Proudest Capital. We're here to not only just invest in the companies, but help them and also inspire others to want to do great things. Trying to because you think about sports, and you think about the time that we're in right now, and this how and the opportunity to use the use of technology and sensors and other types of the opportunity to use analytics, and I talk to my kids about how important math is, and I tell my daughter and my son, there's so much that you can do if you love sports. And you also really are someone who knows math and can really do some amazing things in the sports industry.
I mean, I'm awed by it too. And I would also offer that we had our first esports panel at the conference probably 10 plus years ago. Daryl Morey is very involved in it. He's very involved in esports today still. And I remember the students kind of making fun of him on the call when he suggested a panel on esports. He's like, "Who's going to watch video games?" And I just kind of piped in. I was like, "Well, I think Daryl's been right about a couple of things." So we had that esports panel, and we've had it every year since. I think we had 2 this past year, actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I think that it's part of the future of sports. It's part of the idea of how you'll engage fans, like you were talking about before. You can only fit so many people into a physical structure, and now you may only be able to fit a lot less, right? And I think that's one of the interesting things as the CEO of Kager. I know that I'd love to talk about Kager as well as this amazing report that you've recently put out.
Thanks.
And talking about like how will things move as we through this COVID world.
I'll provide a little bit of background. So a couple months ago, when obviously everything really started with COVID, we saw a lot of the research that was out there, and it was mostly survey based, which there can obviously be challenges with not having a representative sample, not having enough people that you're actually surveying. And there was also just of how information was being reported. Data was showing the COVID infection rate, but it wasn't telling it over an N, meaning like the number of people that could possibly get it. So we, for really the good of the industry, wanted to put our capabilities from a technology and data science to work. And we wanted to take a data-driven approach to trying to understand fans' interest and in going to games as the economy and the world recovers from COVID-19. So we created a framework and we pulled a ton of publicly available information. So everything from unemployment to COVID infection rate to mobility. And we did it on a market by market basis because a lot of the information is very insular, and then we folded in our knowledge of the sports industry and some of the unique analysis and capabilities that we have that we can bring to bear. The NFL is a major client of ours. We didn't use their data, but We obviously have a very good understanding of the football industry. We've built them a league-wide ticketing platform that all the teams in the NFL have. We work with Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment. We work with the Sacramento Kings. So our perspective and our scope is really nationwide, and we wanted to help people gain a better understanding, looking at it again from a market-specific, location-based, from a fan avidity component in terms of what were in our teams, events, venues doing in their market to help people during these difficult times. And then the last is specifically, I'll call it the product, but the venue. What are the specific things that venues are going to do to give fans comfort in returning to events and sports? And so we rolled out the report 2 weeks ago, and we just had our first update midway through last week, and it's been incredibly well received. People have thanked us for the work, which is awesome, because we put a lot of extra time and energy, and big shout out to the Kager team for doing an awesome job. And a couple of the interesting findings for us, especially in this most recent update, when it first came out and we saw Houston was at the top, I actually called Daryl and I said, what is it like there? Because we're in Boston and we're one of the third worst impacted from COVID. And he was just like, Jess, people are moving freely. And I mean, what an eye-opening, but to be able to look at our analysis and have that kind of insights. But I think leagues and teams and people who are running music events, they're looking at it and gaining a lot of perspective and insight as to where they could think about testing in different parts of the country for return. In addition to that work, we're also looking at other industries to see what restaurants, grocery stores, what are they doing as people are coming back, and trying to provide this broad perspective. So we're actually been talking with lots of different organizations to help provide additional data to just enhance what we're generating and creating. And a lot of people want to share, anonymized and aggregated data to help with what we're doing, which is obviously impactful and gratifying. And it's been fun to see how people are coming together to help ensure a safe and expedient return of fans to sports. Because, I mean, listen, the experience of going to sporting events, there's nothing like it. And we got to do it in the right way. And anything that we can do to help that is important for I think a lot of people's sanity. There's nothing greater than cheering for your home team and doing it live. That bond, that unity, it's really incredible.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things that hopefully we can do something to help you and to help all of us, right? I mean, and that's what the whole idea of our 76 Capital Leadership Series is, talking with people like you, sharing all the things that the different leaders across the sports industry are doing, getting that out there. Hopefully there are people that are watching or that will watch this in the future that will say, oh my God, I got to talk to Jessica. I need to talk to her team at Kager because we need this information. We need to work with someone that can help us really move our business forward in a post-COVID-19 world, which hopefully we're moving into. So this has really been awesome, and I appreciate all the things that you're doing, and whether it's on the Sloan Conference, whether you're doing it as an exec with Kager, and it's just been it's awesome, and I have a few questions that I wanted to kind of wrap up with.
Okay.
A couple kind of quick hitters, I guess we can call it in a way, right? So
sure.
So far, I mean, it sounds like you have so much more that you are going to accomplish and achieve in your career. But so far, what's your proudest moment?
So there might be a little bit of a recency bias on this one. But honestly, this past week, everything that's been happening across the United States has been incredibly emotional. And I think the specific efforts that we have taken at Kager is really what I'm most proud of. And again, maybe a recency bias, but I don't think there's anything more important than the education and learning that's going on right now across the United States. So, I mean, we were we sent a communication. We've had a diversity and inclusivity newsletter that we've had going out for about the last 8 or 9 months. We've done some specific efforts. We have a young person on our team who has really helped champion this within our organization. And when everything started to go down last weekend, I reached out and asked for his guidance on, what we could or should do. And, we ended up having a forum on Tuesday that really he led and provided perspective about what it feels like and what's going on. And it was incredibly emotional. We allowed other people to talk about when they've experienced injustice or seen it happen. And, we've been very active in trying to we have like a Slack channel for Black Lives Matters, and we're trying to find ways that we can contribute and everyone can do something. But I don't think I've ever felt more emotional than I did during that forum and that discussion that we had. And the most important thing now is how do we continue to have impact and, move our country forward. So I'm very proud of that. It sounds crazy probably, but.
Well, not at all. Because look, and one of the things that we've talked about in our short time of getting a chance to know each other is, we at 76 Capital, our overall philosophy is always to, work with smart and nice entrepreneurs who want to change the world. And when people, ask us, my partners and I, about what's this change the world stuff? I thought you were a sports event. What are you talking about here? And I said, well, because, we think that, as I've learned this quote from David Stern, and who was a powerful influence in my life, and as many others, and he talked about, how, sports really can really influence life, and that's what Nelson Mandela said, and like using those kinds of quotes. But for us, it's all about working with the right kinds of people, trying to move forward, bring people together, try to make this world a better place, help others. Look, it's our responsibility. We say all the time, to try to make someone's day better. Everyone has the responsibility to do that every single day. And yes, now there's a gigantic spotlight on it, but this is something that I know you and we've been talking about for many, many years now, and how important that is, because that's what it's all about. And that's one of the great things is sport is this incredible unifier, bringing people together, allow people to play competitively against each other, but then afterwards, you put your arm around the person you were competing against so hard, and have dinner with them afterwards, and that's what it's all about. So, so one of the other things I wanted to ask you is, maybe this also could change at this point as well. So who's your dream guest?
That's easy. Michael Jordan. I grew up in Chicago. I have the Wings poster in my office. I've been on Daryl for years for that, so he's the dream.
All right. Well, we'll talk offline. Maybe we can help each other with that one.
Okay.
Do a little something there. And so maybe this next question is really about, you may have already answered it. Who's your favorite athlete of all time?
Oh, wow. My favorite athlete of all time. Yikes. God, that's a really good one. I do love Michael Jordan as an athlete, obviously. I guess it has to be him, right? The other dream guest would be Bill Gates. So if you have any ins there.
All right. Well, and then I figured you'd say me, but we'll
I think you're already in. What are you talking about? We already talked about it.
No, I'm kidding. So let's kind of we can wrap things up here with really let's talk a little bit about the future. Your future goals for you personally, your business. or it could be, you know, for the country and the world. You know, what are some of the things that you hope that we can all accomplish over the next, hopefully very soon amount of time?
Well, I'll start. I guess I'll start with Kager because I'm so passionate about what we're doing and trying to help redefine the sports industry through data and technology, and really help organizations better connect with their fans and provide better experiences because they know the customers. And it's so important. And listen, sports is what memories and family memories are created. So like, how can we bring those to bear better? I personally think having better data is a key driver, and helping organizations apply it is super critical. So no big one, just redefining the industry.
That's a little small.
No big deal. You know, personally, I'd love to own a sports team one day. So just do that. For the world, I mean, it's upon all of us to educate ourselves. You know, like I said, all of us have experienced our own challenges in our lives. But I think what I've learned in the past week is really opened my eyes to things that I didn't really fully recognize. And I think we all need to use our platform to help remove racism and ensure that there's justice across the United States. And, you know, you're seeing all these movements also now happening globally in response to what's happening in the United States. And that's just incredible.
It's really incredible. It's a great place for us to wrap up. Again, this has been awesome. Thank you, Jessica, so much for joining us on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. I've learned a lot. I hope all the viewers out there did as well. And I hope that we get to do a lot of things together in the future.
I hope so too.
So thanks again. Really appreciate it. And next week, on Wednesday night, we are really excited to have another great guest on our show. Well, this time we'll have Mason Plumlee, NBA player. Also, I'll swallow the fact that he's a Duke alum because of my Maryland stuff. But yes, a Duke alum as well. And also really involved with the Players Association at the NBA right now. And one of his business partners, Tom Eggleston, who is an investor, actually has been to your conference a number of times. Jessica, he told me. And they do some investing together, and I look forward to having a really great conversation with them. But for tonight, I just want to wrap up again and say thanks so much to Jessica for joining us. Please always reach out to us anytime on our 76 Capital social media networks, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. Sign up for our broadcast each week on YouTube. And again, have a great night. And all of us, let's try to all come together and do everything we can to make this world a better place for everybody. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks.